Oh my gosh, everybody. Wait till you see this program where I interview another one of my team members, Valerie Kwietniak. She has a history that may surprise you. Trauma and trials, I know we all go through them, but she's had more than her share, and yet now such a glowing, beautiful example of what happens when you live the awakened way. Stay through to the very end, because the wisdom she shares, the farther we get into this, the more it will just have you on the edge of your seat saying, yes, this is how I need to live my life. Enjoy the show. Hi, everybody. Welcome back for another episode. I'm in the midst of my series where I'm interviewing each of the wonderful assistants who helped me with my work. So far, we've talked to Bev and Lynette, and we're taking people in the order in which they came on to the team. So today it's time to talk to Valerie. Valerie Kwietniak handles all of my emails. She screens them. She's the first one to see them and say, Suzanne has to see this one, because I don't have time to see all of them. She beautifully answers those that still need an answer. And she handles them so well, I want to say beautifully again, because she just does everything from the heart, very much aligned with our whole mission. So she has a backstory like all of us. Everybody has a story, right? So you're going to learn some things about Valerie that are going to help you in your path as well, I know, and also just help you to feel a beautiful connection with her that all of us on the team do. So Valerie, I know you're out there. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Suzanne. I'm just so thrilled to be here, and thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for serving on our team. How long have you been working for me now? Time flies.
Well, it does fly since January of 22, I believe.
2 years. Wow. Yeah, really fast. You've been such a godsend, truly. But you also help with the newsletters and whatever else needs done. Oh, registrations for events.
Yes, yeah. yes, and it's a joy. I get to read the emails that people send in, letting us know how your messages have changed their life. I get to read those, and it's just, it's not work, it's not work.
Yeah, that's how all of us feel. It's a passion, it's a service, it's joy. So
it is a joy. Yes, truly.
And if it ever isn't, then we need to not be doing this, right? To call it
well,
work.
Yes. And I remember what you said when you hired me. You said, okay, when it's not fun anymore, you need to let me know.
Good. Well, you're also a dear friend of mine, and why don't we begin with telling everybody how you came to discover my work? What brought you into, both of us into each other's orbit?
Well, a dear friend in Florida had gone to one of your talks in St. Pete, and she contacted me and said, you need to look this woman up. She is the real deal. And I think it was also a channeling of Sanaya, and she's kind of skeptical. And so, after seeing you, she was on board and said, look her up. And at the time, I hadn't really thought about mediumship. I had just graciously stepped away with much gratitude from the Catholic Church. And so, but a medium could help me connect with my dad. And that was big. So I looked you up. I put my name on your list. At the time, I was 219. And then I began following you. And one day I happened to see that you were going to be in Albuquerque on June 10th, 2014.
That's so funny, because I'm going to be in Albuquerque tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's not where you are now. You're
right in Taos, but yeah. So I just I showed up. I sat next to a woman who just happened to be who happened to live in the community next to where I lived, and we sat there and we chatted a little bit, and then we listened to your talk, and it was fabulous, of course. A lot of truth resonated with me. And afterwards, I went to the back. I purchased one of your books. I stood in line with everybody else so that you could sign it. I handed it to you. You signed it. You put your head down, signing it. You put your head up. You handed it back to me. But when you brought your head up, you did this kind of thing.
So for
And you
those
said,
listening, if you're only listening on a podcast, it kind of looked back like I was listening to something or looked a little surprised.
yes, like you had been, something that caught your attention, definitely something that snagged you. And you looked at me and you said, you lost a male figure. And
I've heard you tell this story before, Valerie, and when I hear it from skeptical ears, to me, it's like, well, who hasn't, a grandfather or a father? I wish I had been more specific at the time, but I don't usually do those kind of in the moment bringing through somebody.
Well, and I think I realized that, but because I had just, my father was shot and killed when I was 6 years old. And so this would have been 10 years ago. So at the time I was probably 58, maybe. So for that long, I had been carrying around this grief. And so when you looked at me and said, you lost a male figure, I knew you were talking about my dad. I had no doubt, but I didn't want to hold up the line. And so I scooted away. And you looked at me and said, he's with you, And then you said, email me. So I could hardly breathe when I stepped out of the Unity Church. And in the parking lot, I ran into the woman I was sitting next to.
Is this the woman I just reached out to today on the phone that we were talking?
No. Well, she came up next. She was behind me. And so when I left the line, she looked at you and she said, I'm the one you should have said that to, because she had lost a male figure. And you let her know that's not how it works. Okay. And so she came out, we were in the parking lot together, and we chatted, and she told me that she had, her fiance had died 6 months earlier. So we exchanged contact information, which there's a really cool story in that.
Okay.
So yes, I went home. I emailed you. Long story short, you were on your way to Flagstaff. You said if you had good reception, that you wanted to put me at the top of the list, because obviously my dad was trying to get your attention.
Yeah, I call that a setup.
Yes, it was definitely a setup. And so we had the reading over the phone. And I always say that I was your worst sitter, because I was overwhelmed. It was like you brought my dad back to life. Of course, he never died. We know that. But I didn't know that at the time. Not really. I mean, I think I would talk to my dad, but until your teachings in your classes, I wasn't aware that at any time I can connect with him. And by connecting, I mean, I can hear him, I can feel him, I can talk to him, and he can answer, he can respond. That was huge. And so when you started the reading and you got really into it, I knew it was my dad. And I was so overwhelmed, I couldn't say anything. And at one point you said, Valerie, you're going to have to say something.
Just to validate that this is resonating.
Yeah. Well, you have to. I was hardly breathing. So, but I could hardly wait to get off the phone and call my sisters.
I'm curious, were there any evidence that made you say, my God, that's him?
Well, so this was in 2014. Obviously, your skills have, grown since then. But even at that time, you mentioned one of my brother's names. You mentioned you told my father was trying to tell you that one of my sisters was going through a rough time, and you gave me her name.
Okay.
And then there were a couple of other things, and that I, the things that he was saying, that I knew it had to be my dad. And but I think it was those two things. And then you talked about what my sister was. You talked about medication she was taking. You talked about personal things about my sister,
And all coming from your dad. Yeah.
and all coming from my dad. He said it in such a way that I had no doubt.
Good. I just wanted to make sure, because that encounter at Unity, for anybody who's new to mediumship, it may sound sketchy, but an evidential medium wants you to leave with no doubt that, yeah, that came from him.
Yes, there was no doubt in my mind, and there were things that my father talked about that was going on in my life at the time that you couldn't have possibly known.
And how beautiful that after all that time, he was able to show you that he is still part of your life and aware of those things.
Well, that was the other thing. We often get this question in our emails. Well, my loved one has been gone for, 50 years. Can you still communicate with them? Well, maybe they reincarnated already. How could you communicate with them? And at the time, I thought it had been over 50 years. Could she really communicate with my dad? But it was like he was right there. Like he was the 38-year-old man he was when he died. He was there. And after that, it was like, it's like I wanted to run out to everybody and say, he's not dead. He's dead.
That's right.
He's here. And yeah, so that that's how I came to know you. And then after that, just followed your teachings and read your books, and then I took your first Serving Spirit Level 1, the first class on mediumship.
I remember.
In Prescott, Arizona, and of course that's how I met Brenda,
who is now my guide in spirit. Just the veil. Yeah.
Yes, and we landed up sharing a room together, which I was the one that asked her, do you want to share a room? And I hadn't even met her when I asked her that.
Wow.
but there was obviously something that was nudging me, and and the rest is history, because we just became very close.
Well, I would like to tell everybody that you were with Brenda when she passed, right?
Yes.
You and
yes,
Lynette.
and that was,
yeah.
Yes, and that was, and another dear friend, Raven, and that was just such a gift for me. And I called Brenda I once told Brenda, Brenda, if I had to choose a mom right now, I would choose you. I wasn't close to my mom, so Brenda just, I don't know, she felt like a mama to me.
Even though you were relatively the same age, right?
Yes. Brenda was maybe, I don't know, maybe a year, a couple of years older than I. But she just, I don't know. There were moments in our relationship that she felt like the protective mama bear, and that's why I said that. So we Yes, we were very close. And so after taking that first class, and I took the class because I really wanted to hear from my dad again. I still hadn't gotten to the place, even though I think I said this in the podcast where you interviewed all of us, where 6 months after I'd had the reading with you, it was Christmas Eve. I went outside that night and I'm looking up at the stars and I say, "Merry Christmas, Dad." And then it's like, oh, he's here. I can ask him for anything. And then I said, "Oh, come on, give me a shooting star." And then within a couple minutes, maybe not even a couple minutes, maybe a minute, there was a shooting star. And I just had tears in my eyes and I was just so filled with gratitude. But I still hadn't, really started really communicating with him like I do now. And I think taking that first class with you and then so working for the Catholic Church for many years, I wasn't new to sitting in the quiet. I did contemplative prayer every morning and would sit with, a word. Maybe it was a passage from scripture. Maybe it was a flower. But just to sit there in the quiet for about half an hour and just allow it to speak to me. So I wasn't new to sitting in the quiet, but I was new to meditation. I was new to the fact that we're consistently and constantly guided moment by moment by our spirit guides. And even now, as I look back and think of voices that I heard, a voice that would just tell me what to do, or voices that would ask me a question.
Yeah.
I realize now that was my guides all along. So it was taking your classes that really helped me with that. And then, of course, that during that first class, I recognized some abilities that I had that I had no idea, none. I went there to hear from my dad. And then when we got paired up and we were doing, just sitting in the quiet and then ask spirit to bring forth your partner's loved one. And I was shocked by what came through. And there were a couple of,
yeah. And
yes.
I know that it's those years of sitting in the presence, in the contemplative prayer, which is a form of meditation, so that when you're tasked to be quiet and sense who's here, that intention brings out the awareness of what's already here.
Yes. And once I relaxed, because the first exercise you had us do, I just bombed totally because I was just so nervous. But once I relaxed and just, you've often said, just play with it. And I once heard the meaning of a mystic is one who is willing to play with God.
Nice.
And so just this, just relaxing and just flowing, just allow. Things started coming. And then after the class, you encouraged us to practice and find people we could practice with. So that's the second part of the story of meeting the woman.
Oh, good, because I made a note. I want to hear
it. Okay. So the second class you had was in Albuquerque. Well, I didn't take that class because I had taken the one in Prescott. But this woman took the class. And of course, you encouraged everybody to practice. So she contacted me and asked would you be willing to practice with me?
Huh.
Let's practice with each other. So over the phone, it was my turn to be the medium and her turn to be the sitter. And who shows up but her fiance?
Ooh, goosebumps. I was hoping you were going to say that.
Yes, yes. And he showed up with enough evidence. She knew beyond a shadow of a doubt. Matter of fact, I feel prickles on my head now.
Yay.
He showed up beyond a shadow of a doubt. She knew it was him. She was so excited afterwards with the evidence that came through that he called his family afterwards.
Wow.
Yes.
They were open to it.
It was so touching to be an instrument of healing and an instrument of joy, because really she had so much joy after that reading. She was joyful, and I've seen people walk away from readings different, joyful, hopeful, healed.
That is the point.
Yes. Well, yes. And it's, how could anything that's so helpful be scary, be wrong?
Everybody take note.
Yes. So yes, that's the story of the woman.
Right.
So it was such a, it was just a wonderful closure to the contact that I made that day.
Well, I know that you did a reading for our Bev on the team. And when I interviewed Bev, we even showed the picture that you did. She showed it or talked about it, how you brought through her father and you were drawing pictures as you worked, and you drew all of her grandchildren, not even knowing how many grandchildren she had, to the number and the gender. So have you been doing a lot of readings, and what's with the spirit art?
So the spirit art came, it came kind of, I don't know, accidentally maybe, because I had heard that doodling keeps you in your right brain. Because even though I've always thought I was more of a right brain person, I think during the readings, that because I struggle to get everything right all the time. I want to get it right. I want to get it right. I want this to be good. I want this to be good. And that immediately takes me to that other side of the brain where it's all about trying and doing. And the right side of the brain is about being.
That's right. Yep.
And so I started doodling, and I was just doing practice readings, and I was doodling. And one day I was giving this reading to this woman, I'm doodling, and I'm looking at it, looking at what I doodled, and it looked like geese. So I asked her, I said, well, what's with the geese and your grandmother? Because we had her grandmother. And she said, oh, well, my grandmother raised geese.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that
And
great?
I thought, oh my gosh, maybe there's something to this. So and that was also the same reading where I said, your grandmother is saying, call her. And you know how you've always said, say everything?
Don't question, just say what you're
At the
getting.
time I was like, she's saying call her. I thought, call her? How? And then she said, oh, I want to cry right now, because when I'm missing my grandmother, I go to the phone and I literally call her number. And I just, it's like I'm talking to her.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
And I was like, I was really surprised. Anyway, I tried the whole doodle thing a couple more times. And each time there was something about it. And I am not what you would call what talented artist. I paint very simple pictures, very simple. But as I started doing watercolors for people, maybe it was an image that I would get, and I was doing these watercolors, I would look at it, and I've spent many years judging myself for not being good enough. But the funniest thing about those paintings, I would look at them, and it was like I couldn't judge them.
Oh,
There
wow.
was an energy in them. There was something, I couldn't even put my finger on it, but there was an energy there that I would just paint it and look at it and say, okay, that's it. And I would send it off. And
May I,
that
may I put my 2 cents in
yes,
there?
yes.
I know that that's because the soul within you was letting you know that didn't come from Valerie, that came through Valerie, Valerie's higher self and spirit working with you. So I love that you didn't question that.
Somebody said that one day. Somebody said that it was coming through me and not from me. There is a difference. Yes.
There it is.
Yes. So yes, that's where the artwork came. And you know, I would like to mention one particular reading when I was just practicing. And it was a good friend of mine whose son had crossed the veil few years prior. And she was struggling. And she had had a couple readings, but he hadn't come through. And she was struggling. She's a really dear friend. And I was hesitant because it's, you know,
You
a
didn't want to
child,
disappoint her more.
I didn't want to. But then there was something, again, it was something that you said, just play with spirit. Just allow yourself to be an instrument. Allow yourself to be an instrument of healing. Let that be your intention. And so I said, let's give it a try. What do we have to lose?
That's right.
But everything to gain. So two days before I gave her the reading, I was in meditation, and I just see his face because I knew him. I see his face, and he starts giving me these things like a color, his favorite color, something that took place while they were traveling to such and such place.
He's going down the list that you learned in class.
There were just little things. There was just these things. And then I got this really strange thing, like it was a Greek Dionysus, the Greek god Dionysus. Dionysus was the party god.
Oh.
Well, and then it had to do with him partying. but anyway, so when I gave her the reading, and I ended up giving her these things, and they were probably, I don't know, 95% accurate. So that was all good. But the most transformative part of that reading for her and for me as well was at the very end. You know, you talk about merge. It was probably maybe the only time, maybe there have been other times, but this was real powerful because suddenly I wasn't there anymore. He was there. It was him. And he said, I love you, Mom. That was at the end of the reading. And she whispered his name. That was him. That's him. And there was such a merge. I felt him. It was so powerful.
That's when we talk about mediumship, we're merging two energy fields, two beings of light, merging their light to become one. And you got out of the way enough that he truly spoke as you, through you.
Yes.
Straight to his mom, and she felt
absolutely
that. Beautiful.
Absolutely. So that, yes, that was very powerful. But again, I had no idea, and it was just something that I started doing and practicing. And then I did have a website at one time, and I think it was maybe in 2018. I was going through a really rough time, going through a messy divorce and estrangement from my children and my grandchildren. And it was, there were a lot of things happening in my life at the time. And I started really struggling with readings. It was what I perceived as failure with the readings triggered that you're just not good enough. And that just, it shut me down.
Well, that's a lot. A lot to do when you were dealing with a lot of personal issues.
Yes.
And people need to understand that to connect with spirit, we need to give them all our love and give them our high energy. And you needed to be focused on your human issues.
Well, yes. And something, you know, when you interviewed the 6 mediums, something that Colleen Smith said, because I had spent some time asking myself, why did you shut it down? What was it? And Colleen said this. She said, you really have to know yourself, because it's in knowing yourself, that's where self-confidence comes in. That's how you get self-confident, is that you know who you are. And at the time, I didn't. I didn't know myself.
I know you do now, which is
yes, because there were a lot of issues, traumatic childhood, traumatic marriage. There was just a lot of things that I had not taken the time. It's because I think of myself as, I'm kind of a spiritual overachiever. I don't like the process. I like to go from A to Z and skip the in between. and you're just like you and Lynette were talking about. You have to feel. You have to be willing to feel the ugly stuff, because it's only feeling that you can heal. It's only in the feeling of it that you can heal. And if you don't feel that ugly stuff, I think it really does get stuck in your body.
Oh, no doubt.
Or in my case, if I tried to make everything look good and spiritual. So anything bad that happened to me, I knew how to make it look good. I knew how to dress it up, to explain it or find reasoning with it. If I made it look good enough, then I wouldn't have to feel it for what it was, for the ugliness that it was.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if childhood abuse, sometimes I think for me, I try to explain it away, or it wasn't that bad.
Okay.
It's probably normal. It wasn't that bad. And then I went from that to, I'm supposed to forgive. So I forgive them. So you see, I went from here to but there was no, well, how did it feel to go through that?
You know what?
I left that out.
There was no processing. You tried to go from A to Z, just like you said.
Exactly. There was no processing. And so if I was hurt, I learned how to swallow it.
I know so many people can relate to this. So it's beautiful.
Yes. And so you know, you swallow that pain, I had a lifetime of just swallowing everything and then just, you know, trying to make it look good. And I guess you can call it different things, you know, sweeping under the rug, or, you know, stuffing it into a closet, or, um, and then if you think about it as an instrument, you know, if you think about like maybe an artery, like your arteries in your heart, when they get clogged, nothing flows. Life cannot flow in a clogged artery. And my arteries were clogged with a lot of pain. And no matter how I dressed it up or what pretty words I used, it was still there. And it was just getting tougher and tougher, because it's real hard to live trying to make everything look good all the time. That's a hard way to live.
Oh yeah.
And so it was always a struggle. It was everything was a struggle. So yeah. Once I
Go ahead.
well, you know, I credit. I had the spiritual background. I had spiritual tools before I met you. To me, it was like the awakened way, and I'm looking at your book right now. The awakened way, what it has done for me is it's taken me from it's like riding on a bear cub versus riding on a giraffe.
What an interesting analogy.
You know, the perspective I had was so narrow, so in a box. And the perspective I have now is so wide. And there's no more fear of not being loved. You know, because if I failed, and that was, you know, if I failed, then somebody would, because I was also afraid of anger, my own anger and everybody else's anger. So if they got angry, then they didn't love me. So, and if they got angry with me, well, it was my fault. And that meant I had to try harder. And so it was just like a mouse on that wheel, you know, and through meditation and then truly listening to the guides and what was going on in me, and feeling and letting the tears come, letting myself feel all the hurt, and then nurturing and caring and comforting myself as I felt the pain of past wounds. Then I could start feeling that love that has always lived inside of me, that was just covered with so much stuff.
Could I, if you don't mind, I would like to bring up the fact that you are a cancer survivor.
Yes.
And I just see such a connection with, you know, cancer is when the body fights itself and blockages occur. And what you're telling me here is about a lifetime of fighting yourself and stuffing down feelings. And you had colon cancer, right?
Well, here's what you may not know. In 2002, I was diagnosed with a very rare autoimmune disease that almost killed me. And I went through chemo with that. What is an autoimmune disease? It's your immune system attacking itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I approached the disease like, this is a teacher. It's come to teach me something.
And I'd like to really make the point as we get into this, that these illnesses and diseases are not punishment. They're indicators that something's out of balance.
It was an indicator, but I also looked at it not only as a teacher, but as an invitation. And, when I was diagnosed with, when I had colon cancer in 2021, that shocked me. That really shocked me, because I think I had taken pretty good care of myself on the outside. But the colon cancer, and I had a reading with Sandy, our dear friend Sandy, shortly after I was diagnosed, and our dear friend Brenda came through and said, cancer will unmask you.
Cancer?
Cancer will unmask you.
Ooh.
So there was the invitation, let's go deep into that colon. Let's go deep. Let's see what's there. What's there. And it made so much sense to me. At first I was a little resistant, like, wait a minute, you mean this is my fault for swallowing all this pain? This is because there's that fine line of, well, it can be caused by, swallowing pain, and where does it go? It goes in the colon. So is this my fault? And then as I was dealing with that, then that would make me angry, like, wait a minute, it's my fault. That means something's wrong with me. It was like I really had to do some processing.
Yeah, there you go. Wow.
Some processing to get to that place of, okay, it's here. It wants to show me something. What do you want to show me? I'm willing. I'm ready. And I'm so grateful. What do you want to show me? And I was shown I had some anger hiding out in those deep places in myself. Anger for wounds, anger for hurts that I never dealt with, hidden angers. And so I spent pretty much all of last year, 2023, being a philosophical counselor. She's also spiritual director. And also somebody you interviewed on the podcast, Mary Sice.
Oh.
And she helped me go back to those places that were hurt, where I was deeply, deeply hurt. She helped me feel them.
To make sure it doesn't come back again, right?
Well, I at this point, the cancer is really like a one and done. The autoimmune disease, they told me, there is no cure for this. You could relapse at any time. I've always felt that was also a one and done. It was one and done. The cancer's one and done, because it came. At some point, I sat with it and felt it and received all I needed to receive from it. I don't need it anymore. So it's a one and done. And I feel healthier inside and out than I've ever felt in my entire life.
It's such a beautiful story, and you had miracles along the way. And I've been honored just to know you throughout your journey, to watch how graciously you handled it and how bravely, but yet still very human. You found that balance between
yes, because
and the knowing, and the trust.
Right. I think going through 2 types of chemo for 6 months and And it was hard. It was hard. Um, but I did have some, you know what Bev calls the tool bag. I had tools in the tool bag, and one of my greatest tools is gratitude. And that gratitude was big. It has been big for many years. But I was able to to find gratitude, you know, for little things during the day. The fact that I could just sit there and nurture myself, that felt like, I was grateful for that. I was grateful to have a partner now
That's what
who
I want to
took.
bring up, that you in the midst of all of that, your spirit brings you together with the perfect man for you.
Oh, yes, yes. We had just started dating. Well, we had been dating about a year, I guess, when this cancer came up, and I had surgery. I was in the hospital. He comes to see me, and I tell him, "There's the door. You didn't sign up for this. I'll be fine. You know, you walk out that door, I'll be fine. So, go for it." And he looked at me and said, "I'm not going anywhere. We're going to get through this together. Come to my home and let me take care of you." And I have never been taken care of in that way, ever, ever. And as a matter of fact, I want to tell you this little story because I think it will help others when they're really going through a tough time. Lynette talked about, the hot showers, the comfort, how you comfort yourself when you're really struggling.
Yes.
Um, so it had been, I think I was already on the second month of chemo, and I'd found out that there was a mutated gene in the tumor, and they were going to have to extend my chemo time from 3 months to 6 months. And I was sitting there feeling horrible physically, but mentally and emotionally, I thought, how will I do this? Feeling like this. Um, and it was in the morning, I'm sitting there. Jacob, my beloved partner, is getting ready for work. Um, he worked full time, made sure I had breakfast every morning, gave me my chemo pills, said a blessing over them, gave them to me. Would work all day, come home, make dinner for me, do the dishes. He did everything. But that particular morning, he was getting ready for work, and he looked over at me and he said, he stopped what he was doing, and he looked over and said, "Put your sweater on and put your shoes on and take my hand and walk with me." He took me outside. We have about an acre, and he's planted almost 100 trees on his property.
Wow.
And he took me out, and it was in May, so the grass was just starting to turn green, and it was a sunny day. He took me out, and he more or less introduced me to all of his trees.
Huh.
And we're just out walking. He didn't say, "I'm sorry this is happening," or "You'll be fine." He just talked about his trees. We walked around the property, and then we came in. Uh, he continued to get ready for work, and he left. What happened during that time that we were walking around, there was a shift in my thinking, to how am I going to get through this, to, oh yeah, I'm going to get through it, because I started seeing the little shoots of grass come up. I felt the sun on my shoulders. I looked at these trees that had gone through year after year of storms, and were not just surviving but thriving. And I thought, I, nature did what nature does so very well. nature heals. And that day was the real turning point for me to, yes, I'm going to get through this and it's going to be okay. And all is truly well. And
I would
nature
say
does
Jacob is
that.
like an angel in disguise, a genius.
Well, he was very intuitive. He's very intuitive. He's a lover of nature. And he knew. He put me in the hands of nature.
Genius, brilliant,
Yes.
inspired.
Yes.
I could talk to you for hours. It is you have this, doesn't she have beautiful energy, everybody? It's so soothing, so gentle. And this is why, when I needed somebody to handle my emails and do them beautifully and aligned with the awakened way, you were the perfect person for that.
Well, I'm honored. I'm honored and privileged to do that. And it's you've often called it a ministry, and it is truly a ministry.
Mm-hmm. It is. Well, because we try to keep these to about an hour, with the time coming up upon the hour, what would you tell people living the awakened way is all about for you?
Okay. Well, it is seeing everything from a higher perspective. You start living that way, seeing life, your life, seeing everything, everyone from a higher perspective. And it's life-changing. There isn't anything that could take away that. You learn about that, the inner joy that you have, that inner joy that no matter what happens in your life, that is there. It's there. It's in. You learn about who you really are versus what we call the story. There is such a big difference in that. And you go through these things and you can sit back and say, oh yeah, that's the story playing out. This morning while I was taking a shower, I said, oh yes, I am a piece of God experiencing this shower.
Right.
Yeah. And I the awakened way has brought me to that. That's it.
What a blessing that is. I'm just so grateful that Spirit brought us together, that I'm so grateful for where you are in your life right now. I feel such happiness for you, because we talk and I see the joy that you have in life now, the peace that you have. And now everybody knows what a long way you've come and what you've suffered along the way. And that gives hope to everyone, not just hope. Everybody can get there. We have these tools.
Yes, it's just something really short. When I lived in Alaska for over 20 years, I used to watch the animals, and I would watch the moose with their long legs, being able to navigate through just really deep snow. And one day it dawned on me, if a moose was created to navigate the challenges of where they live, perhaps I was created, perhaps I was sent here not just with a little bit, but fully equipped to get through anything. So that is what I would want to tell everybody, is that we're all fully equipped.
And that
Yes.
perspective you talked about, you said you're looking at the book, The Awakened Way. The subtitle is Making the Shift to a Divinely Guided Life. And you clearly, to get to that higher perspective, is just a shift in perspective and knowing you're fully equipped because you are connected as a piece of God.
Yes. And that I think, that's the difference. When I was going to church as a Catholic, that was a belief system, right? And now there's a knowing. And with this knowing, there's no defending it. With a knowing, you it's being. It's who I am.
And what a beautiful soul you are. I know I speak on behalf of everybody who's been listening and those who got to watch it on YouTube. Just a big thank you for being so open, so honest, so loving, and sharing that beautiful energy with us.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you for who you are and the love, the hope, and the healing that you bring to so many. Thank you.
Well, that's just that spirit coming through like it does when we finally understand who we are. And thank you for helping us get to that point. All right. Well, everybody, I hope you're as inspired as I am and you go out and you spread that love, that your light within you, spread that with everybody around you. That's the point of this program. I love you all, and we'll see you back here on the next episode.